Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode in our conversation series titled My Impact, where we get to hear from our incredible Equal Justice Works fellows about the work that they do out in the field. My name is Brooke Meckler, and I am a program manager in the Law School Engagement and Advocacy Unit here at Equal Justice Works. And I'm honored to be here today with Kace Rodwell, a 2018 Equal Justice Works Fellow, to talk about the work that she does and how she serves her community. So Kace, thank you so much for being on the line. It's always so great to see you and to hear from you. I'm really excited to talk about your work.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for asking me.
No problem. So let's jump right in, starting from the beginning. What compelled you to pursue public service? You're obviously very committed to helping others. So why public service, and why did you decide to do it through law school?
Well, I went into public service, I think, kind of for a lot of reasons why many of us do. We want to see a difference in our communities, and we see the different obstacles that they're struggling with, and we want to help and be a part of that. And for me, it was no different. I guess the slightest bit difference is I grew up in my nation's capital, Cherokee Nation. And so what legal issues we see is it's a constant battle of, land issues, restricted land issues, reservation land issues. We think about our water rights. We have the Indian Child Welfare Act. There's just obstacles that are, Native Americans face just on their status of being Native American, and for, different legal battles that tribes have as a whole. And so that was kind of the same for me is, I wanted to go and try to help kind of alleviate that. What can I do for individuals in my community, and what am I seeing? Because even within my family, we have issues with different land rights. There's you cannot sell land to and that kind of thing. So we have, many obstacles that we see in our community, and that's kind of what was the push of why pursuing public interest and what we can do. And it kind of also goes and grains to my Cherokee values, because we always work on how can we help our families, how can we help our communities, how do we build and, maintain our culture and our language and our land. And so it was kind of one of those things of, this is something I need to do for my community. It's something I need to do to help my tribe. And so it just kind of sought to, go into law school and work in public service.
And it's so inspiring how you were able to do that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And you are a sort of an Equal Justice Works superstar, because not only are you a postgraduate fellow right now, but you were also a Rural Summer Legal Corps fellow. And I don't know if listeners know that about you. I'm particularly excited about that because I run the Rural Summer Legal Corps program. So can you talk about that experience and how it led to your fellowship?
I absolutely can, because I am so proud of both my Rural Summer Legal Corps and Justice Works projects. So when I became a Rural Summer Legal Corps, I was part of the Rural Summer Legal Corps team of 2017. And so what my project specifically was to handle estate planning issues that Native Americans face in our communities. Particularly, I did APRA wills, or American Indian Probate Reform Acts, that work with trust land. And I helped different Native Americans in the 5 tribes that would have been like Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Seminole, kind of go through, different laws that particularly to our land status. For the 5 tribes, it was all blood quantum. It was all, you have to be a half 5 tribes in order to own restricted land. And of course, thankfully, in 2018, that was amended to remove it because, on this basis, it's kind of ridiculous. We are the only, group that has to, have a blood quantum to own land. And that was kind of a historical thing of federal government policy saying that if you were half Indian or more, you were not competent to own land. And so that's the reason we had this blood quantum requirement. So you couldn't just will any individual, where you can see that they leave it to, a spouse, or leave it to, a biological child. There's just laws restricting that for Native Americans. And so this was kind of a group project I worked with my host site at Oklahoma Indian Legal Services to see, what a need it was. And so my host site helps all the tribes in Oklahoma. There are 38 federally recognized tribes. So for my project, we would hold will clinics in those tribal communities because we're located in like central Oklahoma City. So it's a little bit difficult. You can see if you're living in Northeast Oklahoma, where it's a 3-hour drive to get to Oklahoma City, or way down in Lawton, where it's a 2-hour drive. So for my project, we got to go out to the communities and hold a big little clinic where we brought out attorneys and paralegals, and that way we could sit there and talk with them one-on-one and kind of go over all of their issues of what we see in their land, and what they can and cannot do as far as who they leave it to, who the beneficiaries need to be. And it kind of alleviated that burden of, because a lot of our clients also deal with like poverty issues. So you can't just ask somebody to drop, on a Tuesday to miss work, to have to travel, that kind of thing. So that was my project for Rural Summer Legal Corps. And so I still maintain that host site with my Equal Justice Fellow. So that was kind of, why it was important to me was the fact that, I got to go out to the communities and serve. And that's really what showed me I was on the right path, because I wanted to do public interest, but I didn't have that kind of experience until Rural Summer Legal Corps, of actually being there in our community, serving the communities I wanted to serve. And with that, it really showed, pulled on my heartstrings of, this is where I need to be. These are the communities I need to serve. And I wanted to stay with OILS, Oklahoma Indian Legal Services. And so luckily, once Rural Summer Legal Corps ended, I still maintained that contact with my host site and kind of told them, Equal Justice Works, fellowship is something I wanted to pursue. And they were more than happy to be like, yes, we can absolutely come up and design a project. And so if it wasn't for Rural Summer Legal Corps, it might not have been like the breakthrough.
Sorry, you cut out just a little bit, but it sounds like you said, if not for Rural Summer Legal Corps, you wouldn't have had that relationship with your host site to design the Equal Justice Works Fellowship. So let's talk more about that, designing your own fellowship. Can you talk through how you decided to focus your project and how you worked with your host site to do it, and especially offering any tips that you would give students who are working on projects right now?
Absolutely. So I'll probably go with tips first, because, explaining, the tips on how to do it kind of explains the same path that I took on how to, design and tailor my project for myself. So you just have to talk to your host site. I knew where I wanted to be. I knew where, I really liked the attorneys in the office. I really, and I already built that rapport because of Rural Summer Legal Corps. But if you know where you're at, you know that this is where you want to work or where you see need, then you just go to the host site, because that's pretty much what I did. As I went to them and I said, well, where is there a need? Where do you see that, I could better serve? What are we seeing that's the most marginalized group or the most marginalized issue that we're not seeing in equal access to justice? What is something that we can help tailor so that way we can fit that need? And that's kind of where we come up with my project right now. And so that would kind of be your fellows, is kind of reaching out and asking them, like, what is the best thing that you see right now? What are we needing that's, greatly underserved? And that's kind of what got into mine, because when I went to my host site, that's what they described as, well, the Indian Child Welfare Act. It's a large numbers here in Oklahoma. Like I said, we have 38 federally recognized tribes, but yet, we have a small office of 8 attorneys. So it's not enough to just, handle all of these amount of cases and caseload, because there's 2 varieties that fall under the Indian Child Welfare Act. You have juvenile deprived and you have private guardianships. And most of the time, if you're not familiar with this particular law, it's really easy to overstep, and many court systems do. So we just didn't have enough manpower on the ground running, helping as many parents as we can, because oftentimes parents go being unrepresented and having to do things pro se. And without knowing or having that kind of skill set of knowing that you need to look at the Indian Child Welfare Act, you need to look at federal law, and you need to look at state law. Oftentimes, you're not getting the type of representation that you need to be getting in court. And so that's kind of where my project began, is trying to represent parents in these cases, represent the Indian custodians who have already established guardianships with their, these children. So that's kind of where I had stepped in and what my project does.
That's incredible, the work that you're doing. And you're actually nearing the end of your fellowship. So I'm wondering if you can reflect back and talk about some of the lessons you've learned, or talk about what was really memorable throughout your 2 years in your fellowship.
So I'll say that one of the most memorable, it's going to sound out kind of harsh, but it's, a harsh reality, was the racism I faced in my fellowship, and not with my host site, not with my clients. It's in our court systems. Oftentimes I was always referred to as a social worker, for one, because I was a woman. I was always referred to as the tribal worker because I'm Native American. And I was always referred to somehow as the tribal attorney, even though I don't represent tribes in these cases. I represent parents. And so it was just a constant battle in the first year of being like overwhelming, like, wow, this is happening almost in every single case. I was even stopped before walking in like courtroom doors by security because they wouldn't believe I was an attorney and would go through my bag. And they were like, why do you have case files? And, you know, no matter, I said it 3 times, I'm an attorney. And they still went through everything because they did not believe I was an attorney in court with a briefcase. So that was kind of one of the most memorable things, but it really motivated me to show that this is what we're needing though, because if I'm already facing this much group of people, I'm just a social worker. I'm just the tribal worker. I'm just the tribal attorney, and I'm an attorney in court. I know the parents aren't getting the type of representation they need. So it was really, it was more motivating more than anything else. And so luckily I had my host site that was like, we need to get on board. We need to do trainings. And so I luckily went out there and did a couple of trainings with the private bar. Oklahoma Bar Association, kind of talking about the Indian Child Welfare Act and what you need to see in these cases, like rights underneath it, that kind of thing. So I know that's kind of like a more of a negative thing, but it was more of a positive thing because it showed me what the need was. And then over the last 2 years, I mean, it's been countless memories. Hard to pinpoint, 1 or 2 things. And it's always a memorable experience to have families reunite. It gets like super emotional. So I'll try not to hit that today of getting to see, kids reunited with their mom and dad. That's always going to stick with me even after this fellowship. I just can't say enough good things about it. Like I said, I can't pinpoint exactly everything that's good because my fellowship has been fantastic. And even through the hard times, it was always something positive that I could be working on, helping my client do, and helping reunite families. So it's a long-winded answer, but.
No, it's a great answer. And I think it highlights just how rewarding the fellowship was and how you were able to help families in ways that are just really incredible. And thank you for sharing the negative aspects as well, because even through that adversity, you were able to make changes. If you were looking at trainings and you were looking at ways to sort of change the perception, you could affect a new attorney's experience in the future. So that's really great to hear. Because you are nearing the end of your fellowship, let's talk about what's next for you and how you think this fellowship has affected your career goals going forward.
So, in short, this is my life now. I can't see not doing the Indian Child Welfare Act. I can't see not continuing helping the communities that I'm helping right now. So even after my fellowship, I plan to stay with Oklahoma Indian Legal Services. And I've been very fortunate. They met with me early on that said, hey, if you want to stay here after your fellowship, I was really fortunate to have that. So, because they asked, is there something else would you like to do? We do probates, we do guardian ad litem work, we do all kinds. And I'm like, absolutely, I want to get my hands on everything, but I cannot get rid of my ICWA cases. It's my heart, passion. It's really what got me here in this office and made me want to stay in this. So, even after this, even if I, outside of Oklahoma Indian Legal Services, I want my ICWA. Like, I love my cases, but, I'm here to stay. So as long as they'll have me, this is my life now.
I'm sure they'll have you for as long as you want to stay there. So my last question brings a focus to how we're sort of trying to adjust to what's going on with COVID-19 because we are living in such an unprecedented time. Is there any advice that you would give law students who are preparing to enter the public interest workforce as they look at the legal landscape and how they can sort of navigate this new way of providing services?
Yeah, absolutely. On just a regular standpoint, my advice for them to get into public interest work would be trying to take as many litigation courses or moot court or mock trial as possible. Because when I was a naive law student, I avoided all these things. I was like, I don't want to do litigation. I don't want to be in a courtroom. Like, I'm nervous. And I avoided these things. And then the minute I had a plate, it was going to court. It was, kind of being thrown out in the deep end. And I really wish, like, wow, I should have went ahead and took these courses. I should have went ahead and took as many writing classes as I did, because I avoided those as well. But, especially with COVID times, it's a lot of writing. It's a lot of, communicating and filing motions electronically. It's a lot of, emailing back and forth with different parties. And so, even without having to go to physical courtroom, the courtroom doesn't stop, because I've had nothing but virtual hearings in my cases. We've even had family team meetings in my cases where we have these, and we've all done it by video conference. So it really doesn't stop, even if you don't meet physically in a courtroom or physically in a conference room. Life keeps going. And especially with my project, these families still need help. They still need help to reunify. And just because COVID's going on, it doesn't really stop that kind of thing. So my advice to, future fellows is to keep doing what you're doing. Take as many litigation courses. If you think you're going to be in a courtroom, take as many writing classes, because I know they're awful, but I avoided them as well. So that's why I was like, hindsight, I should have took the extra writing classes. But it's what you're doing, everything, will eventually, even out. Because I know I was a scared law student when I first started this fellowship, because I hadn't been in a courtroom setting and I hadn't taken those classes. But yeah, I would absolutely, highlight, like, public service is, something that's near and dear to my heart. So if you want to go out and pursue it, I suggest you absolutely should.
That is great advice to end on. Thank you for sharing that. And as a prior scared law student, I wish I would have had that advice when I was in school too. Well, thank you so much, Kace, for sharing so much about your work and about how you've been able to help the community over the past few years, both in rural summer legal court and your fellowship. It's so great to hear from you, and we can't wait to see what you do next.
I absolutely appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on today.